Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another week of Spooktober shorts on We Watch Shudder. My name is JD. Who's here with me?
It's Michelle.
It's always Michelle. It's an extra
It's always
spooky
me.
Michelle.
Extra
Look, guys,
spooky.
you know the drill. We normally watch movies from Shudder. That's how this whole thing started. Every now and then we talk about things outside the Shudderverse. And in October, we like to drop new episodes every day. Look, we say we like to. We've done it 2 years in a row. Who knows what will happen in year 3? We're talking about horror short films this month. First week, we did horror shorts that went on to become popular features. Week 2, we talked about the short film work of Ari Aster, as well as his most recent feature, Beau is Afraid. Michelle, what's the scoop this week? Third week of Spooktober.
The scoop, the delicious ice cream scoop. I don't know. Never Hike in the Snow. It's a Friday the 13th fan film and a suggestion from a Parrot Head Dad on Instagram. He has
Hey,
a
thanks,
Jimmy
a Parrot
Buffett
Head Dad.
podcast. Yeah, go check that out. We love a Parrot Head Dad here at We Watch Shudder because
Have we done have we done one of his requests previously, or their requests? I guess I shouldn't assume genders.
Have. Yes.
Okay. Which one was that?
I knew you were going to ask me that. It was Darker Than Night.
Oh, yeah.
Was the woman who we could not figure out if she had become old or what. We won't spoil it too
And
much.
she had the black
confusing.
cat. Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that. You know what I
Yeah.
found out recently is apparently there's a remake of that film that just came out a few years back. I'm kind of curious to go back and watch it. I'm not
down
sure
to
how
do
it's
that.
going to be because the promo image I saw for it when I was scrolling through the streaming library made it look like one of those really bad, like mid-2000s, early
Yeah, I see it.
2010s sort of teen weirdness. So I'm not sure. I'm
I'm
but,
definitely gonna watch it though. I love me a good bad movie, so if it's one of
for
those,
sure.
I'm on board. So,
So, but yeah,
but was
we're
today a good bad movie? We're gonna find out. We're gonna talk about it.
yeah,
Let's talk about it.
we're talking about fan films from popular franchises all week this week. People who said, you know, I love that character, those characters, those stories so goddamn much. I'm gonna make one of my own in tribute to the things that I love, and we're starting with one of the biggest horror franchises of all time, Friday the 13th. Never Hike in the Snow is the name of the film. Michelle, you probably know more details about who made this and the important information behind it. Guys, we're not doing a spoiler-free section. If you need us to not spoil things for you, tough shit, we're going to do that. Michelle, take it away.
Yeah, it came from Womp Stomp Films on YouTube. Produced, written, and directed by Vincente DeSanti. I'm sorry if I did not pronounce that
Who
correctly.
also played Jason in the movie.
Yes, exactly. And I think I will clarify by the time we get to one of the later episodes, but I believe that he had a part in one of the other movies that we did. And I think I had messaged you about that, but I have to go look. I think it wound up being a serendipitous thing of like, oh, he produced this other independent film on YouTube. And that's pretty cool to me. I like that we can find these kinds of things and they're just available to us and they're good quality, usually, not always. But I just like that people can make their stuff and we can enjoy them as fellow horror fans. So it's so cool.
Yeah, for
I was
sure.
so excited to get suggestions.
Yeah,
for fan
definitely, and want to thank a Parrot Head Dad. Is it, Michelle?
Yeah, because he's a
wanna
Jimmy
thank-
Buffett guy.
Yeah, want to thank them for this specific recommendation, because I believe it was this recommendation that really kickstarted our thought of, oh, we should do a whole week
Yep.
on fan films
absolutely
from
was.
franchises. So this whole week really, and that's probably
All dedicated.
yeah, and that's kind of why we wanted to start with this one,
Mm-hmm.
is because it was a recommendation. So I'm going to try and summarize this movie for you here. Look, if you know Friday the 13th, you know what's up, right? This movie opens with a dude running through a snowy woods and he's all panicked and clearly terrified and trying to get away from something. And lo and behold, we eventually find out it's Jason Voorhees that he's trying to get away from. Does he get away from Jason Voorhees? Of course he doesn't. That's how these movies start. Jason shoots him in the leg with a bow and arrow. We'll need to talk about the quality of that bow. The arrow was fine. That bow looked like a toy. But then, in one of my favorite moments in the entire short, because like the effects here were awesome, especially for an indie fan film like this, Jason puts an axe right horizontally through this poor bastard's open mouth, like splitting his lower jaw from the rest of his face. It was intense. And then some people find it because the dude's car was right there. And so eventually the cops find this car and they see blood all over the snow, but the dude is not there because Jason drug his body away. And it turns out this guy had a mom because everybody has a mom, and he lived with his mom. And so they contacted his mom to be like, hey, your son, we found his car, but we didn't find him. He's missing. Now, never mind that he's barely been gone less than 24 hours, and there's typically a 48-hour window before any kind of investigation gets started for a legal adult. But, whatever. And then there's a crazy dude who it turns out is supposed to be Tommy Doyle. Not Tommy Doyle. Is that right, Michelle? No,
I have no idea. We'll talk about Jason as a whole when we get to it.
But it turns out it's him all grown up, and he's trying to tell the cops that Tommy Jarvis, that's the one. Tommy Doyle is the kid from Halloween. But it's Tommy Jarvis all grown up, and he's trying to tell the cops that it's Jason Voorhees coming back to kill people. And, of course, it turns out he's right. And Jason Voorhees kind of randomly kills a couple of cops, and then it just kind of ends. It seems like, and I guess this is ultimately a prequel to a movie they did previously called Never Hike Alone. So it makes me curious to also give that movie a look at some point here, because this was very anticlimactic. I felt like it just kind of ends. But as an exercise in Friday the 13th fandom, I thought this was perfectly serviceable. Again, I thought the effects were really good. I thought it was just as good as any other Friday the 13th story I've ever seen. Take that however you do. I'm a fan of several of those movies, but this was solid, I think. What did you think, Michelle?
Well, now that you mention it, I think a parrot head dad told us to watch Never Hike Alone, but we went, that's an hour. We're going to watch Never Hike in the Snow. So we might have ripped ourselves off.
We might have screwed this up, parrot head dad. I'm sorry.
You know what? This was still made several years after, and I did add Never Hike Alone to my list as well. It was just too long for the shorts. It's basically a full-length film. So
that
for the record, I do recall that being the way that this went down, and it does end abruptly, but I thought that might be the reason. I did not realize that this was a prequel, though. So I thought it was just another thing in their Friday the 13th fan films, because they have a third one coming out now. So I thought this was just like the second one, and I feel like it still gives us the essence of it. I am looking forward to watching the hour-long one.
I'm trying to remember where I got that information.
I knew it.
It's
so
in
you
the
might have gotten it
IMDb
from me.
description. No, in the IMDb description for Never Hike in the Snow, it says 3 months prior to the events of Never Hike Alone.
Oh,
so it's a
the
prequel.
Good. I did not catch that. So that is good to know. And I feel like we screwed up the last movie recommendation we got from a parrot head dad, because we were both like, I'm confused. Are we supposed to like this? And then he was like, no, I thought it was interesting. It's okay that you didn't like it. I was like, I'm so sorry if this is your favorite movie.
But no, like I said,
I think we liked it.
It definitely was, like I said, as a story in itself, it felt kind of anticlimactic, and there were some things here that just there's this whole angle with the dead guy's mother that has no resolution at all. But it was good enough that, like I said, it does make me want to take some time to sit down with the hour-long original that this is a lead-in for and see what that's all about.
I agree. This one's a pretty standard Jason movie.
Yeah.
Should we talk about Jason?
It's Hockey Mask Jason, and those of you who follow us on some of the social medias, at least on Facebook, I think that might be the only place I posted it. But you guys all know that even though I certainly appreciate Hockey Mask Jason in certain films, especially Friday the 13th Part 7, I think that's my favorite Hockey Mask Jason film, and also the first Kane Hodder Jason. I love Baghead Jason. I've always loved Baghead Jason. I kind of wish he had stayed Baghead Jason throughout the entire franchise. That's just me. But no, so those are my two favorite Friday the 13th movies outside of the original. The original is again a classic moment in time. Looking back on it, you can definitely see the independent nature of it, but it also makes the idea that this tiny little movie ended up blowing up and becoming a huge franchise that put out 8 movies in 9 years. That's pretty impressive. And so, yeah, that's kind of my experience. Friday the 13th Part 7 is the first one I ever saw, and that has maintained its position as one of my favorites. As I've seen all of the rest of them multiple times. What's your take on Friday the 13th?
Well, we both know I like to say things to upset you sometimes just to get a rise.
Never.
But I promise what I'm about to say is the truth and not just to make you mad. I don't really like the Jason movies, especially the beginning ones, Friday the 13th. I also had a very hard time remembering who was Friday the 13th and who was Halloween because they're so similar to me. I do think Jason is a little bit more interesting than Mike Myers, the Canadian actor. I don't get it. Like, why are we afraid of him? He played the Cat in the Hat.
Before you get into your controversial statement, it's interesting that you say that because you got Halloween 1 and 2 before. I think maybe Halloween 2 was slightly after the first Friday the 13th, but it was before the first Jason Voorhees Friday the 13th. And then you had Halloween 3, which is the one that wasn't about Michael Myers, and then they took a long break because that movie was a commercial disaster. And I have always argued that part of the problem with the Halloween franchise, starting with number 4 in 87 when Michael comes back, and then 4, 5, 6, and so on, is they turned around and turned Michael Myers into Jason Voorhees. So the fact that you have trouble telling them apart, that honestly doesn't really. I mean, first of all, obviously, you know, they're masked killers in worker jumpsuits. You know, just that, but also Michael Myers in the later films is basically just a reinterpretation of Jason Voorhees. So you're spot on there, Michelle.
Yay, I said something correct about classic horror. It also would have been the case that Jeff probably just put on whichever slasher film while he was babysitting me. So I just got like Jason sometimes and Michael sometimes, and they were just interchangeable. And I, as a young child, was introduced to these slashers and had a very hard time telling them apart because it wasn't until we started doing this podcast that I really would go like, okay, the name of the hockey guy is Jason. Yep. So to make sure that like I got it right each time because I just never cared. I'm not a slasher person, but my favorite Jason movie is actually Freddy versus Jason. I love Freddy versus Jason. I love Freddy Krueger.
I was just going to say, it's because of the Freddy, right?
It is, but that's also like the time that I actually cared about Jason as a character. Sure. He's not just a slasher guy. There's a whole thing about his backstory, and they're trying to actually help Jason at a certain point so that he can defeat Freddy. And so I kind of went like, oh, Jason's a little likable boy who's just a little bit messed up. Like, it actually made me feel for him as a character for the first time ever. Sure. So I legitimately love Freddy versus Jason. And then my second favorite, for entirely different reasons, I fucking love Jason X.
Oh, Jason X is phenomenal. I love it. It's
I mean, it's space.
It's a completely different kind of movie. It's absolutely
Yes.
not intended to be scary at all. I would straight up call Jason X a horror comedy. Frankly,
It
there's
is
no way.
so good.
Right, but I was actually going to say something that a lot of horror fans, especially classic 80s slasher horror fans, do find a hot take from me is, so like I said, the first one and then Baghead Jason, those two are my, I think, the two best in the franchise in that order. But then for me, I significantly prefer the Kane Hodder Jason films, 7, 8, 9. So that would be the New Blood, where there's the psychic girl who shoots nails into his face, and then the one where he goes to Manhattan, which is all kinds of just fucking ridiculous, but a good time. And then Jason Goes to Hell, and then Jason X. I like those four way better than I like the Tommy Jarvis 3, 4, 5, and 6. I like those Jason films so much better. Jason X was the only Friday the 13th movie I ever saw. No, I guess I saw Freddy vs. Jason in a theater. But Jason X was the first Friday the 13th movie I ever saw in a theater, and my God, we laughed our balls off. I love that movie so much.
I have actually never seen Jason Takes Manhattan. It came out in my birth
You've
year.
never
and I
seen
feel like I
Jason
need to
Takes
do
Manhattan?
that. No, I've
Oh
heard
my
of
God.
it, but I'm gonna add that to my Spooktober list because I have never actually seen it.
It's if I remember correctly, it's the longest movie in the franchise. Its title is Jason Takes Manhattan, and about 15 minutes of it happens in Manhattan.
Oh man, yeah, I'm gonna add that to my Spooktober list. Go back and
It's so
see
good.
a
It's so much fun. I mean, again, it's that late stage ridiculous, cheesy as fuck Jason, with great effects, right? It's splattery goodness and whatever, but yeah, that's my.
This might be odd to shoehorn in for some people, but it is exactly my kind of thing. You know what I really love related to the Jason franchise?
What's
Friday
that?
the 13th, the game. And you
Like
would
the
be
Nintendo game, the original for the NES? Oh, you mean that new one where you can have like 8 players and one person is Jason
versus
and everybody else
Jason
is the campers?
And you will be so happy to know that Baghead Jason is in the video game.
Sweet.
But for my fellow people who are not just horror nerds, but are also video game nerds, Friday the 13th, the game is great.
I've heard a lot of positive things about it. I'm not a video game guy. It's one aspect of nerd culture that I never really got connected to personally. But all of my friends who are video game people and like horror movies even a little bit, they all said it was fantastic. So that's good to know.
It's so fun. It's very scary in a way that I don't find the movies, but we've talked about that on the podcast before, where video games are way scarier than horror movies because you know that you can die in them. The movie will not end 5 minutes in if it's a classic full length, so like somebody's got to survive. There's nothing scary there, but like a video game, you can actually die and the game is over, and that's terrifying. So yeah, just for my fellow video game nerds, it is so good because you can be Jason or a camper and you can get murdered in so many creative ways.
That's lovely.
Well, this actual fan film that we did start talking about.
Right. Let's give a score here on this film, Michelle, and then maybe call this one a day and see what we have to say about some other fan films. What's your score for Never Hike in the Snow?
Okay. One last quick comment. Him scratching his name, Jason, into the car's hood was so funny to me. I did not
He didn't do that. Tommy Jarvis did it.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense. If I knew who Tommy Jarvis was.
He was the crazy dude that eventually they arrest, and he's in the back of the cop car screaming about Jason. Yeah.
Yes.
He was watching the cops while they were finding the body, and then he snuck up while nobody was looking. Because then the deputy turns around and sees somebody over by the car, and he screams at him, and the dude just runs away. Yeah, that was all Tommy Jarvis.
But the implication is that Jason scratched his own name into the hood of a car.
No, not at all. They make it very no. Go back and rewatch it. It's very clear that it's Tommy Jarvis.
Oh. I thought the cops were supposed to think that Jason was like, I was here.
No, that was Tommy
Okay.
Jarvis leaving them a clue.
Yes. I thought it was them being like, Jason was clearly here. And I thought that was very funny. It was not going to factor into my score. I just had to mention it because I was like,
That's fair.
if they think Jason's a dummy, I mean, he kind of is, but like, okay. So my rating is colored by the fact that I'm not a huge Friday the 13th fan. So I do need, in case the creators do happen to listen to this, that is a huge effect on it. I'm not a slasher person. He's just a big slow guy in a mask. Now if he was a hockey guy wearing a gritty mask, that I could get behind. Gritty coming after you with a machete, that's a horror movie I need. Okay, so, but I thought it was high quality. It's just not my flavor of thing. I'm not a flasher. I'm not a slasher fan. So I am going to go with a 3.5.
That's interesting, actually, because I am a slasher fan, and I was planning to go with a 3.5 as well, for different reasons. Again, mostly because for me, like, I didn't necessarily dislike this. It just felt sort of anticlimactic, and I'm assuming that has everything to do with the fact that it's a prequel to lead into the original hour-long fan film that they made. And it probably would have more of an impact because even though it takes place in the timeline previous to the first movie, it was made second, and so clearly there's got to be some stuff going on here that would make a whole lot more sense in that context. And I reserve the right to modify my thoughts on this film after I do go back and see the original Never Hike Alone. Which I might just
agree.
throw in.
We should do a bonus.
We could,
bonus episode.
Let's do that. I'm not exactly sure when
After
we'll be able
Spooktober.
to. Yes, for sure. We have so many episodes, but yeah, we'll do that, guys.
So
Keep
many.
your ears peeled. We'll do a bonus episode talking about Never Hike Alone when we go back to it.
Yeah. Because I knew we had gotten the suggestion, but it was an hour long, and we were trying to keep a half hour or less. So I thought this was still going to be a solid choice. But yeah, we planned on doing it anyway. We may as well. So also, creators, keep in mind, we basically just watched the Outwaters outtakes without seeing the Outwaters first.
yeah, we watched...
where we're like, there's probably a lot more context to all of this.
We watched Card Zero.
Exactly, and then we went,
you
know what, it feels like it's lacking something.
For sure. All right, guys.
But the kills were cool, so I do want to see the full length thing.
Yeah, we got more fan films coming up for major franchises. If you've seen the schedule out on our social media, you know what's to come. We hope you're sticking around. We hope you're having a good time with Spooktober. Make sure you drop us your feedback. Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.
We Watch Shudder is a production of Rat Factory Media, your home for all of today's Rat Factoryist podcasts. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests of We Watch Shudder are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Rat Factory Media. But wait, aren't Rat Factory Media and We Watch Shudder the same people? Shut your cake hole, Charlie. Nobody asked you. We Watch Shudder is available free on all major podcast platforms, and the easiest way to support We Watch Shudder is also free. Just leave a rating and review on your platform of choice. Merge your consciousness with ours on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. We're at We Watch Shudder on all those social media platforms. Or find us the old-fashioned way, on the web at WeWatchShudder.com or by email at mail@WeWatchShudder.com. Heck, you can even leave us a voicemail at 701-566-9510. No, seriously, 701-566-9510. Try it if you dare.